Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Claire Moon, and today we're going to be discussing the Pisces New Moon. Now, Moon is currently at the very, very end of Aquarius. It's just going to be going into Pisces in the next few hours. I did not cover this that well in the forecast that I did for February. So that's kind of why I'm circling around. I am going to do some rising sign horoscopes for this. So if you're interested in that, if you know your rising sign, you can forge ahead, skip ahead. I'll have some timestamps. I'm going to do a little intro though, and I'm going to go over the weather that led us into this new moon, the weather of the new moon, and then give some potential ideas, themes, symbolisms that we should be watching out for during this time. It's kind of interesting because we're going to have the new moon at 1 degree and some arc minute change in Pisces, but then the moon's going to have a solid 2 days or so to really feel into whatever this lunation is starting off as. So without any more delay, let's get my screen shared. If you're getting help from this today, if you like what you're hearing, if it's landing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you would like to keep up with all of this. And what do we got going on? We have a Virgo rising chart right now. It is the evening of February 19th. We've had a bunch of Aquarius weather over the last couple days that's really led us into a place that's going to be quite different of Pisces. Aquarius is much more analytical. It is very almost doubting in a way of, oh, I'm not sure about that. Let's find out more. Let's go investigate, be Saturn, be critical, optimize, get better ideas, that whole Aquarius process. And that is very different than what we're leading into here, which is Pisces, more flexible, forgiving, artistic, mystical, spiritual, much softer, much more flexible, much more loosey-goosey than like rigid Aquarius. And I get to say all of those things about all of it because I'm both. And it's weird, just like Aquarius. So when we had on the 18th, hold up. On the 18th, we had a little bit of a going away party for the sun. We had just a handful of hours where we had both the sun and the moon in Aquarius. You can see them here. And there was a really nice sextile happening between Moon, Mercury, and Jupiter. And, Mercury had just met Jupiter, earlier, or I guess later in the week. And that is a really great aspect to have when we're trying to look at small details of something, but in the realm of a wider picture. So with Mercury, we're thinking about all of the little steps that need to happen. We're discerning, we're being detail oriented. With Jupiter, it's much more, okay, well, what's the meaning and purpose of all of this? And it was in a nice sextile, which is a very supportive aspect. The moon came in on that and acted as sort of an echo for that. So that's really what I think one of the first more important transits we had leading up to this new moon is like, okay, what are the actual details of what's going on here? What do they mean in the larger scheme of things? And we have both of those faculties online and doing very well for us. Planets in transit, Robert Hand talks about Mercury, Jupiter sextile being great for doing deals, commerce, transactions, probably also great conversations, great exchanges with people. All of that was the deal on the 18th. Now, after that, we had the moon cross over, and it ended up getting into this position where it had sextiled Jupiter. It's gotten past its very rational, analytical conjunction with Mercury in Aquarius. And then the moon ended up in what is a malefic enclosure of sorts. So a malefic enclosure is basically like a planet getting rays, it can be a spectral ray from a different house, or it can be by bodily conjunction when you have a co-presence of two planets in a place. And so what we're getting here, I guess it was a little bit after this, once moon gets past that 15-degree mark, hits that trine with Mars, that's when we're in the malefic enclosure. So we've got a trine from Mars here, which, I mean, if we're going to put this malefic enclosure in like a threat assessment level scale, this is not like threat level red at all. Just the fact that the moon has a trine with Mars instead of like a hard aspect, like a square or an opposition or something like that, makes it much softer. Malefics that are in trine, so if Mars and Saturn are in a trine to something, they tend to not behave as poorly toward that other planet, in this situation, the moon. That being said, moon is still sandwiched in between a trine from Mars and an impending conjunction with Saturn. And this was most of the day on Sunday. Pretty much, yeah, until moon gets past Saturn today at the end of Sunday. It feels a little pressurized. That's what I've noticed time and time again with anytime the moon especially is between the rays of these two malefic planets. It does feel a bit pressurized. It feels like, I mean, literally being between a rock and a hard place, kind of. Maybe the rock is Saturn and our hard place, our difficult, challenging place is maybe Mars. But, you know, I don't know. All in all, it's like we have three, counting the moon, planets in a really analytical space, very interested in looking to the future to find solutions and to basically move forward with a large conceptual idea like Aquarius tries to do. And Mars is in a kind of a great position to help. You know, we're getting information, we're pursuing, we're acting, Mars pursuing, acting upon, getting more information if we need it, right? Just continuing to learn, continuing to sift about all the possible data points that we could need in whatever we're doing. Now, the one other interesting thing that happens in navigating this, trying to navigate this, the moon is navigating the situation. And it also ends up being in a square with Uranus, which adds a bit of disruption, a bit of interruption, crunchiness, things not going the way that you planned. So I did mention this a bit in the forecast that this feels like just a super cognitively powerful day in terms of like, if we need to think through things, untangle some intellectual knots, basically just deal with complicated mental tasks. It feels like a really good day to do that. At the same time, there's a bit of disruption. There's a bit of an interruption, and there's a bit of pressure from that malefic enclosure. So it's not like the best feeling day on the map for me on the 19th of February, which is today. And I mean, confirmation bias, of course, we're always looking out for it. But I have been noticing this this today. I had a few deadlines I was running up against, and I was like, yeah, I actually need to get this stuff done. And all the while, you know, I will say, mentally speaking, you know, maybe this is how it's coming out. A little mental restlessness. You know, sometimes these air signs, when there's a lot of activity, and a trine is really free flowing, by the way, it's just energy kind of ping-ponging back and forth with the utmost ease. What's ping-ponging back and forth? A bunch of air, a bunch of thoughts. So, you know, maybe good for cognitive labor if it is focused, if we are a little bit focused. But if we're not, like you have been me today, maybe it's just a little bit scattered. But that's okay, because we did decaf today because of the scatteredness. Yeah. Because, of course, y'all know what I have in my mug. You all know it is cider and tea together. Cider. Very great. Okay. So anyway, we're in analytical mode. We are in thinking mode. But the sun has just went into a feeling place. It's water. It's a sensing place. It's a perceiving kind of, you know, after we get our thoughts in and we're thinking them, we're trying to connect the dots. We're trying to make meaning of things, you know? So it's quite a different energy, and it's a little bit more connective. It does soften the energy overall that I've just described. So we do get that layer coming in. What I really am wondering, so if we just kind of back up with this, you know, the headline of the whole Pisces new moon that we're having today. What it feels to me is like we're thinking real hard about stuff. There's a lot of thinking happening. And then we get into a place of acceptance, or we get into a place of letting go and allowing the meaning to come through without overthinking it too much. Another headline that I'm wondering about is Pisces in general, with Neptune being there for so long, with Jupiter being there last year. Jupiter was there again at the end of this winter a little bit. Last April, we had like this beautiful Jupiter, Venus, Neptune conjunction in Pisces. It's just felt like a very dreamy, idealizing, imagining kind of state. And Neptune's been keeping that ball rolling all year and for years prior. So when it comes to the Pisces areas of our chart, what things are we imagining? And before we start this new moon, about kind of trying to accept or maybe even make real, which I will get to what we are imagining, first we have to do analytical mode. First, we need to be rational about things. We need to think things through. We need to think clearly. We need to have, Saturn, discipline, boundaries, all of these things. We're going to do that. But then after that, allow ourselves to be with what we imagine, to be with what we're dreaming of, or that we've been dreaming of for the last year, to accept maybe what we've been dreaming of the last year is not a thing. Maybe there are large parts of it that are just not doable, achievable, real, like all sorts of things. And then it's time to accept so that we can move on. That, Pisces, along with Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini, all of these mutable signs, they have like the three tarot cards, the 8, 9, and 10 of whatever that suit is. And there is a sense with Pisces, being water as well. There's this flexibility there, but those last few tarot cards really do speak to a moving on, a deciding between things, taking this and that and all of these disparate parts and making what we're going to make out of them or let them go. That's kind of how I feel about mutable signs in general. They all have their own little ending of a narrative that comes their way. Now, granted, we'll talk about what it means to have this new moon happening in the first decan of Pisces. But overall, we're going through that narrative of the 8, 9, or 10 of whatever tarot card we're dealing with in each sign. So, as far as like the decan tarot correspondences. Taking yesterday, taking today, the 18th and the 19th of February, thinking all you want, overthink, overanalyze, be critical, do the Saturn and Aquarius thing, but then allowing for whatever we find out, allowing the meaning to come through for whatever all that analysis was, or even accepting if our analysis came to the response of no, stop, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Then in Pisces, can we accept that? Right? So that's the main vibe for me. Let's see if there was anything else in the weather that I needed to discuss. So we talked, hopefully I talked about that. I think I did. Yeah, the Mercury Jupiter sextile that we also had. That was that really good ability for a good day we had. Then the moon just echoed it to look at the little details, look at the wider picture, see how certain pieces of info fit into the narrative. We had that. That was really helpful. Yeah, I think that was about it. So then let's actually go to the new moon itself. Is that it? There it is. So we can see here at 1 degree, 22 arc minutes, we've got the sun and the moon conjoining in the first decan of Pisces. We also, for like just an hour, just a moment, we have Venus here, the exalting planet of Pisces, overlooking this new moon. We also have Neptune here. Of course we do. They're always there. But then what is also interesting that I will discuss is that we don't really have a lot of other action, like a lot of other eyes looking in on this. Jupiter, who rules Pisces traditionally, who rules this new moon, they're not able to see in there. So if our luminaries are looking for guidance, I mean, depending on which author you're looking at, sometimes they say that a planet in a sign can refer to the exaltation lord of that sign or the triplicity lord of that sign, in which case we would have help from Venus being here. So that is a good thing. But if we're just thinking about like, okay, these planets are only reporting to their ruler Jupiter, then yeah, that's an aversion. That we're not able to see. We're not able to have, there's not a lot in common between Aries and Pisces as signs. So there's not a lot of communication or sympathy between these two places. We're also not getting the rest of the daytime team. Saturn cannot communicate with Pisces. Mercury here is not able to. Pretty much if we're not looking at the outers, which I did look at them, I don't know if I'm going to talk about them today, but if we're just looking at traditional planets, the only one who really sees what's going on in there is Mars by an inferior square. So there's something slightly tense about this. But, as much as this is like a very chill new moon, we've got Neptune and Venus, like exalted Venus. It's like the height of luxury, the height of art and romance, and like the most romantic romance that you can romance about. And it's that ideal of Neptune that's right there. So it's great for escaping. It's great for nap taking. It's great for making art, making love. It's great for cleaning your altar. If we're doing spiritual stuff here in Pisces, Jupiter was a lot of times like a cleric, the spirit of the law. Maybe we're going to clean our altar. Maybe we are going to engage in some kind of spiritual activity. All in all, it's pretty chill. Other good things to do during this new moon, and these are things are going to come up a lot, especially with Venus here, relationships. What about our relationships, even with ourselves, right? Can we be accepting of, let go of, be just open to and inclusive and inviting? What about our relationships could use a bit of a balm, especially if there's any difficult interpersonal things that have been going on in your life recently? This could be a nice little few hours, I guess. And I know this is late notice. It's like, it's Sunday night. But a time to maybe mend some fences if you have any fences to mend with people. I know I already said making art, but make art, dance. If I didn't usually feel so darn tired during a new moon, I probably would dance, but we're not doing that today. That's the vibe. But then we've got this square, and it has Mars, who's very restless, very active, thinking things and then wanting to act on those things, wanting to say the stuff, wanting to pursue information, maybe share that information. There's just a lot of energy there that has to do with the mind, with information collecting and exchanges. Maybe even commerce, I guess one thing this could be is just like, I don't know, making a bunch of high purchases on Amazon. Like, don't do that. Maybe like pump the brakes. But what I find really interesting, another part of this equation, is that not only do we have a very active, maybe restless Mars in Gemini, but it's getting a hyped up sextile from Jupiter in Aries. It's like Jupiter is saying, yeah, buddy, do it. Purchase that map that you don't need. Like, to have 80 billion tabs open in your browser. Do it. I support you. I'm Jupiter in Aries. So that's just adding fuel to the fire. All the while, again, this is leisurely, chill acceptance time. over here in Pisces. This is a square. There's a little bit tense here. But all in all, the sun in Pisces does have the upper hand. They have the final say in what's going to happen because they are earlier in zodiacal order than Mars is here in Gemini. And what I'm kind of wondering is like, okay, acceptance is going to reign, holding the sand loosely in our hands. So it does not, if you hold on to sand too tightly, it just goes through your fingers. That's the vibe that's winning out here. We're holding the sand loosely. But what I'm kind of curious about too is 6 months ago, we had the sun over here not in the midheaven, but over here in Virgo. And at that point, the sun 6 months ago. So what would that would have been? What is it? September, October, November, December, January. Yeah, that would have been in September. Sun was getting an overcoming square from Mars. It's like basically Mars was egging us on to do something. Mars wanted to pursue very badly something, but Sun in Virgo generally plays by the rules. It's very algorithmic. It's like, if this, then that. So yeah, Mars, you might want to do that, but it doesn't fit in with the framework here, or it doesn't make sense based on these very practical notions. Now, at that point, Mars did have the upper hand in that situation. And so maybe we felt that drive a little bit more strongly. Now we've come to the closing square where the sun is in the superior position. And we are going with whatever the sun would like here, which is chilling out, basically. And just understanding, even beyond the whole thing about Pisces just being like an escapism kind of, I don't know, jam band sesh. It also is ruled by Jupiter, who is in charge of speaking, or not speaking, Jupiter, who's in charge of learning, understanding. We've got a wide perspective in Pisces. Pisces is not delusion. Say it with me. We've had a lot of good people on the internet talking about how Pisces is not delusion. Those are not the same things. Neptune is deluded for sure. Pisces on its own is not. And it's actually ruled by Jupiter, who again is knowledge, learning, understanding. It's truth, a little bit of justice added in. So nothing about Jupiter is this just delusion or being unrealistic. I think one really important thing to remember about Pisces and Jupiter being a ruler of that place is that Jupiter is within the bounds of Saturn. So if Saturn is our hard stop on reality, which again, the moon just experienced, we've just had all kinds of reality checks like, oh yeah, this is actually what the situation is here in Aquarius. If Saturn's that edge of reality, that limit, Jupiter is still inside of that. So when I'm talking about like over the last year, maybe we've been dreaming about things in Pisces, maybe we've been imagining how great something could be, and we're in this really imaginal realm. I still believe Neptune withholding, not counting what Neptune is doing, Pisces and planets in Pisces are, maybe considering things that are realistic. Like, yes, maybe I'm dreaming of doing this thing, or I'm dreaming of something, but it's still within the bounds of reality. It's still within that Saturnian limit of what is possible. Now, again, that's very different than Neptune, who is beyond the realms of Saturn and will do whatever, or will imagine whatever it wants, whether or not it's possible. But when I'm talking about, the things that we're dreaming of in Pisces, I don't want to sound like really flippant or like new agey and be like, oh, on this new moon, all of your dreams will be manifest and everything you hope for will certainly come true. Cause like, no, that's not, that's not the deal. But I do believe that a Jupiter ruled place can still be very grounded with what is possible and real. And just because we can take a moment in Pisces and imagine how good something could be, a lot of ideas start off there. Maybe they don't end there. Maybe a lot of our ideas, our hopes, what we have faith in, maybe it's not going to turn out exactly like we planned, but something will come of it. Like we can still create something within the bounds of reality. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about this notion of dreaming something up in Pisces. But okay, let's be super thorough though. Neptune is here. So everything I just said is a little at risk with Neptune here being diluted. So keep your head on a swivel, keep things intellectually, rationally, tethered. And I mean, that is part of the reason why I actually really liked some of this heavier Saturnian energy coming into what is a more buoyant affirmational place. It's like Saturn says no, Jupiter says yes. So, I think it's kind of a good complementary pair, to be perfectly honest. Now let me see. I know those were not the only notes that I had. And also, I just kind of started talking and I didn't look at my notes. I know another thing too is just the decans. Okay, here. So, full moon in Virgo coming up. I got to talk about that. Yeah, I guess let's just talk about the fact that this is in the first decan. These first 10 degrees of Pisces are also going to speak somewhat to what this Pisces new moon is going to be about. And Austin Coppock discusses it being underlying or invisible structures. The structure that underlies something that isn't necessarily very apparent or obvious. And so we can look at the house that holds Pisces in our chart and ask ourselves, what is the underlying structure of this thing? So for me, I'm probably going to use myself as an example a couple times just because, I'm my easiest case study. But I have Pisces in the second house of money. I have Pisces in my second house of what my needs are and how I get my needs met. Also my skills and talents. So when I just think about the concept of money and I ask myself, what's the underlying invisible structure that my money stuff depends on? And I can give some really material, concrete answers, like the fact that I have a spreadsheet for my, my books, basically, my spreadsheet of money stuff, money going in, money coming out. I have an accountant. I am, in general, my underlying structure of my money is very institutionalized. Okay. So those are answers to that question. If I think psychologically, which might be a little bit more Piscean, it's water, it's internal, it's nocturnal. So it's kind of this inward drawing energy versus externally emitting. Underlying structures of money. Oh, I don't know, scarcity mindset, like worrying about not having enough, worrying that the other shoe is going to drop. All of these types of more psychologized structures, definitely my conditionings that affect how I deal with money and getting my needs met. So I might go to the grocery store and only buy one of something because I don't believe that it is reasonable for some reason, like really no reason, that I shouldn't buy two of them when I know I'm going to need another one eventually, So I think looking at those things. So if you have, Pisces in your seventh house or something like that, looking at the underlying hidden structures of your partnership. So you can do that with every single house topic. Look at those house topics that you have with Pisces, the house that holds Pisces for you, the whole sign house, if we're looking at topics, right? And then consider what that question of underlying structure is. Okay. Then the other source that I was looking at was T. Susan Chang. And man, this book, this one right here, 36 Secrets, is very, very good. Wow, wow, wow. Can't recommend it enough. I actually got it for the decans, but I stayed for the tarot. I've been using it in my own tarot readings quite a bit. Okay. So from 36 Secrets, T. Susan Chang talks about the Saturn ruled decan. I think I forgot to say that it is a Saturn ruled decan as well. So the idea of structure or form or something like that makes a lot of sense. T. Susan Chang, I took some little blurbs. Facing fears of the unknown, the liminal space between the conscious and unconscious, the fringe of what can be grasped by the mind. A stripping away and leaving behind of what we once knew in order to gain something more precious. Realizing you are emotionally done with something, letting go, moving on. And then again, themes of uncertainty, letting go of fear that anything could happen, and embracing the wonder and awe that anything could happen. That was my favorite one. Letting go of the fear that anything could happen, but then embracing the wonder and awe that anything could happen, right? I just have to change my inflection a little bit. It's like a whole different thing. But you know, Pisces, it's the moon card in tarot. It's like this place of uncertainty and unknowing and having to walk through that fear and all of these hidden kind of nebulous things to try to find something that is more in alignment with what's important to us. And I think with Venus here as well, another thing to note would be with the planet of values in here, you know, not only relationally, what can we accept, but what do we find valuable? Like, what do we value that also needs some integration, you know? Maybe we really value something or have needs that we haven't been accepting and thus have not been pursuing. So that could be a thing, but really considering looking at those house topics. So like, if it's like this chart and we're in the 5th house, what values do you have around child raising or child rearing or your children relationships? What values might you have about dating or romance or rest or pleasure, something like that? And how can we almost hit like a reset button? I love new moons because they're like a once monthly reset button. And we can choose to be really intentional about trying again about something. So trying again, maybe to align ourselves with what we actually give a shit about, what actually has us, that which gives us meaning, you know, reorienting ourselves toward things that feel meaningful instead of just doing what's rational, you know, what is logical or practical. And, you know, with Saturn coming in here, excuse me, with Saturn coming in here so soon on the 7th of March, I also think that this is a great time, a great couple weeks before the full moon to really kind of live it up. Like, imagine all the shit that you can imagine. Like, have the brainstorm session, whatever thoughts you can get to just come out of your brain, whatever ideas, whether they be about your own stuff or relationships or whatever it is, just get it out and down onto something. Once Saturn moves in here, I'm not sure about this, but you know, Saturn is realism. It's no, it's the no to Jupiter's yes. It's the here's the reality to whatever we were imagining. So I think we need to take the next couple weeks to just embrace and enjoy the loose associative kind of, I don't know, just more flexible and free space of Pisces before we end up having that restricting influence come in here. We'll have plenty of time. We'll have 3 years to be super serious, super realistic in Pisces. So I'm just going to kind of be ignoring it for the next 2 weeks a little bit, but think about your values. Venus is there. She's helping. So some other stuff. Talked about that square with Mars. Oh yeah, and another thing. Oh yeah. So maybe this is the last thing. Another comparison of this Aquarian energy we just had and this great reset button that we have here in Pisces is it begs the question a little bit of, per Brian Eno, of architecture versus gardening. Brian Eno, who is a music guy, who's done a bunch of things, said something about how, you know, we need to let go of this idea of architecture and instead focus more on a gardening vibe. Architecture is where you predetermine things, you make a plan, and then you try to have everything fit in there as planned. Versus with gardening, you're just planting some seeds, you're tending to them loosely, gently, and allowing to see what grows. And that felt very Pisces to me, just planting seeds, new moon, and allowing Pisces to see what grows, Jupiter. Versus the architecture of Aquarius. We're going to build this aqueduct, we're going to build these castles, we're going to build all this stuff, and all the bricks are going to fit in exactly how they're supposed to. And, you know, a lot of times they don't, but you just jam them in there anyway. Very Saturn in nature, just making it work, versus the letting go and allowing that can happen in Pisces. Very different. So gardening, not architecture. That's going to be another big lesson, I think. And, you know, one that kind of reflects my advice that I've been giving to people who are having Saturn go into Pisces of, like, if Saturn's coming into Pisces, trying to make form, trying to make structure, recreate boundaries, or, you know, just basically reconstruct stuff, we want to construct something that's going to have inherent flexibility, inherent ability to adapt or adjust, because this environment of Pisces is so changeable. It is so adaptable. Most structures that you build in the ocean, a bridge in the ocean, anything in the ocean, it has to be built with some kind of flexibility in mind. Otherwise, you know, if it's too rigid, things just snap off and get washed away in the current. So it would behoove us, I think, to be really kind with ourselves with Saturn going into Pisces. Really, of course, that's always a good idea. Like, we don't need astrology to tell us that. But if Saturn is in a place, Saturn brings criticism. It brings in that critical auditing eye, which is very necessary. But it's in a place, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know, a bunch of toddlers finger painting, and some random building inspector comes in and is like trying to audit their art. You know, it's like, no, we're going to have to change your tone. You're going to have to put the clipboard down. Like, we don't need you being so intense about this thing. But Saturn might try to be. So just being very flexible, whatever intentions you're making in this new moon, like, I'm gonna, you know, be more intentional about this thing. You know, if you miss a day or you don't live up to your expectations, be kind with yourself. We've got 3 Saturnian years coming up. Okay. So with that, I think that was most of my intro points. And now we're going to get to some horoscopes as soon as I clear my voice. Okay. I didn't even talk that much this weekend. That's the thing. Usually I'm only like this after a week of counseling people. Okay. And we're going to start with Pisces, because Pisces always has to wait. So anytime I have a Pisces related thing, y'all get to go first. All right. I'm actually going to back it up. No, I'm going to move it forward. So the new moon will look like it's passed, but I just want to get it on the rising. And I mean, you can listen to these for your sun or moon if you want, but the house topics, like if I'm talking about a specific life topic, like, oh, it's about your career, or it's about your house, or it's about your kids, that only is accurate if we do rising sign. So Pisces rising, something new is coming in terms of your mind, body, spirit. The first house is your identity. It might feel like there's some new way of being that's wanting to be set free, to come out, to engage with, to play. Maybe you just want bangs. Maybe you just want to get some different cardigans. Maybe you want to present in a new way that feels more comfortable or more authentic to you. It could be something really simple like that, but it could be something more internal, something about your self-concept or how you feel about yourself, your identity, your appearance. With that, we're getting a little bit of a tense situation with something that's needing a lot of effort in terms of your fourth house. So this is your home, your dwelling, your parent relationships, your private life, all of those things in the fourth. Something about the way that maybe you want to present in your identity, something about who you are, what your roles are, is being challenged a bit by all the busyness going on in your fourth house, some home, family, parent relationships, things like that. I would, in this case, being again, Sun is in that overcoming, overhand position. You do you, my friend. Whatever needs tending to in the fourth, you'll get to it. But what I would advise is that full moon is coming up here in 2 weeks. We're going to have a full moon in Virgo. And this is going to speak to all the tiny details, the little tedious things that need to be done regularly in your life, that might actually be the key to how to have the identity that you would like, or how to express yourself in the way that you would like, how to present the way that you would like. Maybe there's something about the details of your relationships, something about the other, something that needs to be adjusted or considered or taken account of in this kind of consideration of how you want to be. What little things about your relationships need to be tended to more regularly to allow you to be you, to allow that to happen? Or maybe you've accepted something about yourself, and that is bringing up questions regarding the details of relationships. If I am this person, if this is my mind, body, and spirit, what does that mean for all the little ways that I interact with other people? And then we'll have 2 good weeks to explore that. We'll get a full moon here in Virgo on the 7th. It's actually the same day that Saturn moves into your first house. So then the last piece of this as well is just looking at Saturn going into your first house. It's going to be on this degree very, very soon. And Saturn is going to be bringing form and structure into your first house of self. So it's going to be almost like solidifying or congealing that which we've been dreaming of for the last better part of a year. So what discipline might need to be brought to the self in terms of routines, the way that you express yourself, the way you take care of your health, or just structural changes. Maybe, the thing is getting a new wardrobe, but Saturn is coming in asking you to take responsibility for whatever that is. And in taking responsibility for that, we're going to have this Virgo new moon, or this Virgo full moon, that's going to speak to all the little details of how we take responsibility for that. And in this case, your whole identity, just some little things. Okay. Thank you, Pisces rising. I think that's all I have for you. I did forget to talk about the Virgo full moon piece of this, but that's okay. I'll just talk about it for each one. So next we'll talk about Aries rising. So this new moon is happening in your 12th house of emotional health, spiritual health, mental health, very internal landscape. It's also a place of hidden work, potentially enemies or frenemies, also suffering and the spiritual insight that we can get from suffering. It can be isolation or solitude. It can be a place where we don't feel like we are very empowered all the time or have agency. So the 12th house can be a little bit rough. There's a lot of stuff in there that we can choose from. It doesn't all just have to be suffering, but a lot of times it is a quieter place where we kind of go away from the hustle bustle of the 6th house, and we find ourselves in quiet, solitude, loneliness, whatever it is. So you're having a new moon here, speaking to a reset, a turnover. We're starting again. We're beginning anew when it comes to these things. So maybe you've got some emotional, mental health, spiritual health practices that are asking for your attention. Maybe you're imagining those practices that you have for your mental health, your psychological self, and you're imagining all the things you could be doing. Like it would be so great if I were meditating every other day or whatever it is. And, maybe there's a lot of busyness going on in your third house of local people, familiar faces, familiar places, your regular communications, siblings, chosen siblings, anyone like that, any part of our regular daily lived life. It's a lot of the sixth and the third. Maybe there's just a lot of busyness going on there, right? And that's kind of keeping us from doing our internal work that we need to be doing or that we want to be doing. Now, with Saturn coming in here, we're bringing form and structure to these places. It's basically trying to make a container for what wants to grow, what could be these idealized forms that we've thought of. What of that is realistic that we can actually consider and grow? You know, maybe it's not meditating every other day. Maybe it's just sitting down and having a quiet moment for 5 minutes once a week. Like a lot of people we're not even doing that. So let's make it realistic. Let's do a SMART goal. Let's make it specific, measurable, achievable. Can I even remember what they all are? Very smart. SM, achievable, relevant, and timely. SMART goals, because that's what Virgo wants. So when we get this full moon in Virgo 2 weeks later, it's going to be calling you to look at all the details, all the little things that need to be done regularly for you to achieve the internal landscape of your dreams, you know? And the 12th and the 6th go together very well this way, that, you know, a lot of the maintenance-y routine stuff, obligations that we have to do every day in the 6th, if we're really busy with that, it's kind of hard to do the spiritual insight stuff of the 12th. So it could be trying to balance these places a little bit over this lunation cycle, where we're figuring out the details of our daily lived experience in order to allow for some of this, you know, spiritual growth to happen, or, you know, mental health practices, anything you do to help take care of your internal self. All right, little Aries rising, I wish you the best. Let us move on to Taurus rising. So we've got 11th house. What is growing there? Whoops. What's growing there that needs a container? What have we been imagining in our 11th in terms of, and this is kind of a double up, because like in Pisces, we're already like trying to think of maybe the best, most expansive, abundant type of situation. And in the 11th house, we are also thinking of our aspirations, our hopes, our dreams. What are we aspiring to be? Who are we aspiring to be? So it's all very lofty potentially, but it's also our friend groups, our networks of people, our allies that cheer us on as we're pursuing those aspirations. And something wants to grow here. Something wants to be accepted here, maybe. What aspirations have you maybe put down lately? Do you have any new ones you're picking up? Maybe you used to want to be this or do that, and now we're coming to the realization that it's different things. Or it could be new burgeoning friend groups, or having an idea about the people you would like to associate with and how that can happen. So when we're looking at the full moon coming up here in Virgo a couple weeks later, then the question of details really gets asked of the 5th house. Well, how much are you resting? What are you creating? What is your creative process? You know, in the 5th, we create things, self-express. In the 11th house is usually who we're sharing it with to some extent. Maybe it has to do with children. What are the details of my relationship with children, or how I take care of them? And how can I reconcile that with what I'm aspiring toward? Right? Just very like work-life balance almost types of conversations. And Saturn's going to be coming in here on the 7th of March as well, basically trying to tighten up, create some form, create some structure. Maybe we have to say no to certain friend groups. Maybe we have to create healthy boundaries so that we can have the 11th house feel really congruent with what we value, with the people we value, with our spiritual values, whatever they are. Healthy boundaries, limits, saying no, but hopefully to create a container that feels like it's a better fit. Then we've got Gemini rising. So Gemini rising, this is going to be in your 10th house of career and life path. So maybe over the last year, maybe since that that nice Jupiter, Venus, Neptune conjunction we had there last April, maybe you've been thinking about how great your career could be, or what life path you could have, or what your legacy is going to be. And maybe you have huge lofty dreams about what that is. Maybe they're not even that lofty. Maybe they're within that real realm of Saturn that is making things potentially possible. Saturn's going to come in here and try to add solidification to that. They're going to try to add form and structure to a place that generally hasn't had a ton. We can see delays, barriers, potential challenges, not necessarily ones we can't get through, but those can certainly come up when Saturn's coming in. But basically taking responsibility for your big dreams, whatever they are, in your career place. And once the full moon shows up in Virgo a couple weeks later, the details end up getting focused in on our 4th house of home, family unit, parent relationships, our dwelling, where we live, origins, ancestry, but very much the 4th and 10th is the work-life balance sector. It's like, if this is what I want my career life to be, then by the full moon, Virgo is going to be like, okay, well, these are all the little details you need to attend to down here to make that happen. Or maybe it's all the private work, the processes that happen in our private 4th house that end up leading to whatever we're chasing in the 10th. There is a bit of restlessness here in terms of the self. Mars is still in Gemini. It's still going to be there until the end of March. So there might be a sense of impatience as well. Like, I have to do it now. It has to get done. It should have been done yesterday. Do your best to just hang in there. That Saturn's going to be restructuring your 10th house of career for another 3 years. And, even throughout this whole lunation cycle, this whole month, we've got a chance to really look at new beginnings and what we want to start in our 10th house of career. Moving on to Cancer rising. So this is taking place in your 9th house of a lot of things: religion, worldview, philosophy. If you're not religious, I just say 9th house is whatever your larger belief system is, whatever your worldview philosophy is, all those ideas. We can also see long distance travel, publishing. If you're a publisher, it can be a blog, it can be a journal article, it can be something fancy, it can be a tweet. So anything we're mass communicating. It can be advanced education, certificates, college, anything that is after high school basically is 9th house. And also, bureaucracy, institutions, politics, things of that nature. What is wanting to blossom forth here? And in the 9th, this could be you starting off on a new educational journey. This could just be you starting a journey of changing your mind about some stuff. How you continue to broaden your horizons, how you travel. Maybe there's something wanting to unfurl here in terms of long distance travel. Like, maybe you've not done a lot and you would like to do more. Maybe you've been doing a ton and you would like to do less. It can go either way. When it comes to dreaming, imagining, how great could this place be, right? Then we have to ask ourselves, what is realistic about it? Saturn's going to come in and try to create some structure and some form around these things. Oh, you would like to become this thing. Here's the degree or the certificate program that you have to do to get there. Maybe saying no to certain things so that we can grow in a really balanced way. Limits when it comes to long distance travel. Okay, maybe I'm going to need to get a passport and it's going to take me 6 months or 3 months or whatever. Hopefully not. Maybe it is saying no to long distance travel if you've been doing a lot. Maybe Saturn is trying to bring some shape to your belief system, or showing you the limit of how far you can go with that set of beliefs. Maybe you're only getting so much mileage out of your worldview, And Saturn comes in and shows limitations of how that's not going to work anymore. So we have to adopt some new way of thinking and be flexible. Now, when it comes to the full moon in Virgo, a couple weeks later, there's going to be details to tend to explore, investigate the tiny things in terms of how you speak, your way of communicating, maybe relationships with siblings, maybe relationships with your local community or neighborhood. A lot of times in the 9th house, if we've got a large system of belief, in the 3rd house, this is how we embody it or express it on a daily, regular, weekly, monthly basis. You know, I'm going to light my moon candle on Monday, light my Mars candle on Tuesday. That's the 3rd house. But then all the things that I believe or not that have me doing that are in the 9th. So if there's a new start happening with this new moon, if there's some shape trying to be made here with beliefs, how is that going to come out in your 3rd? You know, at some point I had to decide to build an altar over here. Like I had to do all those little things and tasks to, you know, actually embody what I believed in a way that was satisfying to me. So it could be something like that. I would say, you know, when it comes to busyness, now we're getting some mental restlessness with Mars in the 12th. Maybe there's a lot of behind the scenes work that you're doing and you've got to publish a bunch of stuff. But in the 3rd house of daily regular writing, there's some details to be worked out there. When exactly am I going to be writing all of this writing that I need to do? And my mind is going a million miles an hour trying to figure that out and maybe just running in place. So that's what I see going on for Cancer rising. I don't think there's anything else with them. Yeah, I think that's it. Then, how about Leo rising? So little Leo risings, you are going to be having this in your 8th house of other people's stuff and things, other people's resources, exchange of resources, collaboration. It is also the place of occult, esoteric studies. It is the place of death adjacent things. There's so many death adjacent things. I feel like I give this speech several times a week about how the 8th house, you Google it and it's like death. But really it's like, who's the power of attorney? Is there a living will or advance directives? Is the will and testament written up by mom and dad? Who has the safety deposit box key? Does dad have gold buried in the yard? Like there's all of these questions that need to be answered that have nothing to do with like death proper, but that are very death adjacent. So sometimes those things can come up when we have transits going through the 8th house. And more on that note of death adjacent, but completely different, is more psychologized existential questions. I am only here for this life. What am I doing here? Oh no, I have anxiety because I'm thinking about the fact I'm going to die and I got all this shit I got to get done, right? These kind of run-ins with our mortality. Maybe you have a very harrowing experience and you do end up having a close call with mortality. And then you're thinking about it very differently. That's very 8th house. Or someone else in your life, just being near to death can have us changing our mind, even if we are not the ones that are dying necessarily. So 8th house, there is something that is wanting to bloom here, maybe something that we've been imagining or dreaming about for a long time in terms of how great our collaborations could be, how great our partnerships could be in terms of exchange of resources. Maybe we're thinking about the ideal scenario for end of life care. Maybe we want those advanced directives written up a certain way. And to do all of that, to meet the dreams that we're hoping for in Pisces, we have to deal with all the tiny details. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a full moon in Virgo. And that's going to be all the little details having to do with, okay, well, if this is my ideal collaboration, what are the details of what I actually have to offer? or like what I actually have to give. Because if that doesn't line up, then it's not going to work, right? So, get really fine grained with yourself and your own resources and your own bank account or your own time. These resources to be exchanged across the second and the eighth. It's not just money. It's cognitive labor, emotional labor, time, your effort, your attitude, your skills, your talents, all kinds of stuff can be exchanged. So what of that, Leo rising, do you actually have that you would like to share? And, maybe there's a lot going on, a lot of busyness in terms of friend groups, aspirations. Maybe you're aspiring to be all of these things, and there's all these groups of people that want to collaborate or want this or that. And that's just kind of adding some tension. So just hang in there with that. And I would take the time to ask yourself what the details are of what your resources are so that you can give in a way that's sustainable. And then Saturn is going to be coming in here as well very soon, trying to set some forms, some structure, some healthy boundaries to this place of collaboration. So there might be saying no to some things. There might be having to draw some lines in the sand about what is happening with collaboration. This could also be your spouse's resources, your main partner's resources, and having a bit of a reset button with that and what is able to be given from their end of things. Maybe they are not having as much to give, and Saturn is coming in, putting a limit to that. So then we have to work around that and say, okay, well, if this is, I imagine, the best way that this could be, but here's the reality of the situation. Here's the reality of the partner's situation. What consensus can we come to? That would be a possible scenario. So then Virgo rising, you, my friend, have this in your 7th house of partnership. So business partners, romantic partners, platonic partners, any one-on-one person that you're working with. This is a new start potentially for that. What could in terms of more businessy stuff, what would be the ideal business partnership? Or if you have a client practice, what is my ideal client? What is my ideal demographic that I'm looking for, that I would like to work with? And we're going to be having a full moon in Virgo a couple weeks later that asks us the details of you, your identity, who you got to be to have that kind of partnership. What kind of things do you need to do for yourself so that you can take care of the client relationships in a way that you feel really good about, that meet your ideal as closely as we can, because ideals are an asymptote, right? We're not getting there, but we can try. So when it comes to first house, that's your mind, your body, your spirit. Maybe I would like to counsel like 3 people a day, but this chair doesn't allow my body to sit in a way that feels good for my body for 3 clients a day. That could literally be something so simple. The first house of mind, body, and spirit. What things about your identity are true? What are the little details about who you are that need to be accounted for when we're thinking about you in partnership and what we want to grow? And then the container, Saturn is going to be coming in, putting some form, maybe some commitment here, maybe asking for healthy boundaries. And in this case, boundaries are just like the definition of the relationship or the partnership. But there's certainly going to need to be some level of realism, as we know. That doesn't mean that we can't still imagine the best scenario for us and do our best to get there. What might be going on otherwise that's creating a little bit of tension is Mars in your 10th house of career life path. So you might just be super duper busy at work right now, or in your life path, chasing whatever big goal that you have while you're here on this planet. And that is what is causing a little bit of tension with, okay, well, this is the partnership that I would like to see in my life. What's going on with it? And all the while you're being pulled in a bunch of directions at your career. And 2, I guess that question of underlying structures, like what underlying structures result in the type of partnerships that you are in. And how does that operate? And does anything need to be worked on in that regard? That would be another good question to ask. So then for Libra rising, this is going to be happening in your 6th house of health, wellness, disease, recovery from disease. It is our daily maintenance. We got to feed ourselves again. We got to do the dishes. We got to take a shower again. It just keeps happening. And that's the 6th house. It is anyone or anything or anybody who you take care of. That's an obligation or a duty. You know, if I got to water my plants, we got to take the dog for a walk, all of that. We're taking care of ourselves. We're taking care of others. 6th house. Maybe we want that area to look a little bit different than it does. Maybe we've been dreaming of ways in which it could be better. And Saturn's going to be coming in, trying to bring some form and structure to that. Saturn's going to be telling you your limits. Okay, this is as much as you can get done in a day. Or if you want to get this stuff done during a day, here's the structure or the container, the discipline that is going to allow that to happen. Now, the full moon happening a couple weeks later in your 12th house might also bring up topics, more details about the internal world. Well, what about my mental health is affecting my ability to do the daily physical, mental world type stuff, you know? What about spiritual health, emotional health? Are those practices important to you in your daily routines? Are there some details there that we need to take into account? Alone time. Are you getting enough alone time? And how does that factor into all the 10,000 things that you have to do every day? So taking into account that internal landscape, maybe behind the scenes work that no one realizes you're doing. If a bunch of people have a bunch of expectations about what you do in a day, but you're doing a bunch of hidden stuff that no one knows about, that makes it all the more harder to set expectations for yourself, set expectations for others. I think that's probably the most important part. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. With Mars in the 9th, it's like this. I mean, it depends on who you are. You know, in a struggle of 6th and 12th house beginnings, you know, trying to start something up in the 6th or the 12th, it ends up being logistical challenges, just literal bandwidth. There's only 24 hours in a day type of challenges. Mars and Gemini here might be adding tension in terms of things being asked of you in your 9th house, or things you want to do in the 9th. Maybe you want to publish a bunch of stuff. Maybe you're in college and you're doing a bunch of classes every day. Maybe you're traveling abroad a lot, and all of that is making it really difficult to set routines and set maintenance schedules in your daily life. So, you know, Mars is going to be leaving this place at the end of March. I would say just hang in there with it. But, you know, I think the answer as well is that there's only 24 hours in a day. So the hardest thing for Mars and Gemini a lot is just, you know, choosing things, narrowing down options, and focusing. Mars can be great at focusing. In Gemini, it's trying to focus on multiple different things. So it might be up to us to kind of try to focus in so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming to try to begin whatever we're trying to begin in the 6th house for this Pisces new moon. Okay. How about Scorpio? How about that, Scorpio? So we have this happening in your 5th house. So we've got new beginnings. What have you been imagining or dreaming of in terms of your 5th house of romance, rest, leisure, whatever you do for fun to rejuvenate yourself? What, you know, sometimes that's rest, sometimes that's other stuff. Our creative process, our self-expression, babies, children, childbirth, all of those things in the 5th. So what have we been imagining there as the best possible case? And what reality checks have we maybe gotten, maybe recently, from the 4th house of home, family, dwelling? But also, what reality checks are we going to get when Saturn moves in here on the 7th of March? You know, Saturn's going to be trying to put some boundaries, a container for your creative expression, for your sex life, your romantic life, maybe in the relationships of your children, how you're raising your children. Saturn comes in and says, okay, well, here's some limits, here's some boundaries, here's a container, here's a structure. And like I said, hopefully a flexible structure. But then when the full moon comes in Virgo a couple weeks later, there's going to be details coming up about, okay, maybe I want to express myself in this way, but what are the details about what I actually aspire to? Is there an aspiration behind that? Am I really hoping to get somewhere to a certain place by self-expressing? What are the details of your friend groups? Maybe you are retooling or reconstructing how you manage taking care of kids. And we've got all these details about the friend groups that you're in. Maybe you're in like a bowling league. Maybe you are part of an organization at work or something like that. And those things are going to require a certain amount of effort, a certain amount of process. I always like to think about Virgo in terms of the regular processes that we're doing. How can these things work together? How can we reconcile that? We might need to make some adjustments in how we're expressing ourselves or what we're creating or how we're taking care of children in order to really make space for the details of what we aspire to be or the details of the groups that we're involved with. And when it comes to busyness, it looks like Scorpio rising, you might be helping a lot of other people out with a lot of things. Mars in your 8th house of collaboration is having your attention quite divided amongst a lot of different people and their resources and what they need. And so when it comes to rest, that can get pretty difficult. Making sure that we are focusing and we are trying to narrow collaborations down and not do all of the things for all of the people. But again, Mars leaves at the end of March. So hopefully that area of life will let up for you a little bit, but that might be creating some tension right now. And the fact that, there's all this 5th house stuff I would like to do or not do. There's a lot of reconstructing I would like to do in my date life. But right now I've got all these people and projects pulling me in a bunch of different directions. I only have more questions and not very many solutions. So then we have Sagittarius rising. And now we're going to see a reconstructing of something, a renewal, maybe an acceptance in our 4th house of home, family, dwelling, parent relationships, origins, where you came from, ancestry, any of those things. 4th house is also our private life. And maybe we're accepting that it is going to be a certain way, that we need our home to be a certain way. Maybe we can imagine a home that would be the ideal, that would be perfect. And we've gotten some reality checks. We've gotten some limitations. Okay, yes, but what can we actually take responsibility for? Saturn's going to be moving into this place on the 7th of March. And Saturn's going to be trying to put a container around our dream there. Okay, if this is the kind of home that you want, here's X, Y, and Z things that you have to do to achieve that. If this is the parent relationship that you would like to cultivate, maybe there's some acceptance or forgiveness that's been happening there. Now, how do we put up healthy structures or boundaries around that relationship to keep it safe or to keep it regulated? That's something that can be really, really quite challenging, especially if you have gotten to a good place with a difficult relationship. How do I keep the peace? How do I keep things going in a constructive way? And maybe Saturn can come in and create a new, like, healthier structure for parent relationships. It could also be showing us, again, some limitations, some barriers to have to get through. By the time the full moon happens here in Virgo 2 weeks later, we're going to be looking at the details relating to our career, our public life, or our life path, homework, balance stuff coming up yet again. If this is all the stuff I want to achieve in my private life, these are the parent relationships I would like to have, or this is the home or dwelling that I would really, really like to have. What little things about your career might need to be reconciled with that? Maybe it's a time issue. Maybe it's an issue that I'm at work a lot. And to have the home life that I would like, I would need to not be at work as much. When it comes to some stressors, maybe in the partnership, there's a lot of work or effort going on there. Maybe there's a business partnership that we're putting a lot of effort into. In any way, there's a lot of attention being divided amongst partners in life. And that's just yet one more constraint in trying to embrace what we want to grow in the fourth house. So when it comes to what we got next, we got Capricorn rising. So now we come to our Saturn ruled signs, and we've got Pisces in the third house. This is our place of communication, our sibling relationships, extended relatives, chosen siblings, our neighborhoods, those who are nearby, around us, familiar people, places, and things. The third house is also learning new things. It is our daily, weekly, embodied spiritual practice. Again, regular things we're always doing. And maybe this is an area that you've been imagining or dreaming over the last year of how it could be that is so much better maybe than what we have. Or maybe we are accepting that some of these relationships are what they are. And we are being inclusive or being accepting of that and wanting to move forward potentially. With Saturn coming in here, there's going to be some kind of structure happening, some kind of form around maybe your communication style. Maybe there's healthy boundaries that could come in where if I want to have this relationship with these cousins, I can't be in the group chat anymore. You know, like maybe Saturn is saying no to the group chat because we need to cultivate peace, and group chats are never peaceful. Maybe there is something you are doing in your neighborhood. Maybe you're involved with a neighborhood organization, something local, and Saturn comes in and all of a sudden there's more responsibility there. So how can we shape those interactions or those relationships in a way that's meaningful for us, but also in a way that is not overextending or not in alignment with what we find meaningful? And then when we've got the moon going full in Virgo a couple weeks later, something might come up related to beliefs. You know, if my beliefs, if the details are this, and I want my regular embodied practices to look like that, are these things congruent? Are they in alignment? Are there some details I need to account for in my belief system that are going to affect the regular practices that I'm trying to cultivate with this new moon? The container I'm bringing in of discipline to do these practices, what are the details about the larger belief system that inform those practices, if that makes sense? Maybe if we're in the third house and we are thinking about just being local, but there's something you have to do that involves long distance travel, being away from home, we need to then look at the details of that. Like, how often do I actually have to be away from home? And what there might need to be adjusted so that I can build the local space of my dreams or have the community experiences of my dreams. It's pretty hard to do if I'm not around. Some tension maybe coming here from Mars in the 6th. Just a lot of busyness every day, just doing 10,000 little Gemini things every day. And that is definitely going to make communicating thoughtfully harder. It's going to make having those connections with people that are important in your nearby circles and spaces a little bit harder. So how do we just hang in there with that energy at least till the end of March? But know that there's a little bit of tension here, and some of that tension could just have to do with what your daily obligations are. Also, it could have to do with your health or your wellness. Maybe there's something that you're aspiring or hoping for in terms of third house relationships or being involved in community or, being involved locally. But, there's maybe not the vitality or the capacity to be able to do that right now, and what adjustments can be made so that that isn't a problem. Then if we move on to, and PS, like, again, just me totally with the questions and not the actual solutions. If you are having some kind of health or wellness challenge when it comes to Mars in the 6th, another thing to consider is like Jupiter and Jupiter's placements. Like, who can we ask for help? Because if we're going to ask for help, it looks like there could be some found in your home with parent relationships, although they can't really see your, like, what you're hoping for in the 3rd. They might not know that, oh, this is what I want to be writing or teaching or doing. They might not get how important this is to me because they can't see, but maybe you can ask them for help anyway, right? Ask parents for help, ask your family for help. Somehow ask your dwelling or your space for help. That might be something that can help with any challenges, inflammations, busyness in the 6th that is maybe creating some tension with what we would like to see in the 3rd house. Alrighty. And finally, we have Aquarius, the best for last. So we have Aquarius, which puts this in the 2nd house. It puts this new moon in Pisces in the 2nd house of money, skills, talents that we are developing that we could sell for money, our needs, getting our needs met, our self-worth, our self-esteem. And there's something being accepted here. There's something maybe wanting to be grown, maybe something we've hoped for, maybe, wow, wouldn't it be great if my bank account were stable all of the time? It's within the realm of possibilities. We're within the realm of Saturn because we're Jupiter, and Jupiter rules this place. Maybe Neptune's creating a little bit of delusion. However, how great could our bank account be? How great could my skills be that I am developing on this thing? What are my needs? Maybe I'm accepting needs that I have and accepting how I'm going to get those needs met, and coming into a place of receiving in the 2nd house. It's a place where we receive, and there might be some new structures wanting to be born there. Now, Saturn comes in and is going to be trying to put some form and structure to this place. Of course, we could see delays and challenges, but we're also trying to see some discipline come through of, creating some habits that would involve skill development, if that's what you're looking for, or being very disciplined about spending or how we manage our money for some reason. Saying no to certain things, saying no to spending, creating healthy boundaries so that we can get our needs met. Sometimes it does help to say no in a place that always wants to say yes. There is a different type of vibe coming from Mars in Gemini in the 5th. Maybe there's just a ton of things that want to be created. Maybe the creative, expressive energy is wanting to come out in a plethora of different ways, but that scatteredness and that lack of focus is just creating tension with what is trying to be formed in the 2nd house. It's pretty difficult to make money if you're not focused and focusing your creative energy on, the things that you need to do to make money. There could be something with the romantic life that's very busy, or child raising, taking a lot of effort. And that is creating a bit of a struggle with trying to create this healthy kind of structured environment in the 2nd house of money. And when the Virgo full moon happens in a couple weeks, we're going to be looking at the details of the 8th. So what am I actually able to offer? Or what do these people actually want from me? What in my collaborations, what are the details that the people I'm working with, what are the details they care about? If I am trying to, in the 2nd house, this is my stuff and things, my skills and talents, do they actually match with what is needed in the collaboration, for instance? And what are the details so that this exchange, whatever it is, can be sustainable. I think that those will be really important questions. So whatever collaborations you have with people, asking really detail-oriented questions, being discerning, about who you are collaborating with and why. And when it comes to topics like anxiety, existential crises, death, things of that nature, I guess on a much larger perspective, we can ask ourselves, what am I doing with my time here in this life? And maybe that helps inform how we get our needs met or what we're focusing our creative energy on, if we put it in that big, wide existential perspective. I think that's all I have to say. About that. So I think that's everybody. I believe we did everybody. I'm going to go back and just say one more thing that I wish I would have said at the beginning, but I did mention it with each rising sign, is that about 2 weeks after this new moon, we are having a Virgo full moon. And that Virgo full moon is happening the same day that Saturn is moving into Pisces. So this is actually going to be, let's just go to it. Yeah, we can see it here. So we've got Saturn now in Pisces on, well, it's the 7th. And then we've got Moon in Virgo. And it's really fascinating because, of course, it's happening just in that same, couple degree chunk in the first part of Pisces. This does speak to the details that need to be considered, though. So whatever we are accepting in Pisces, dreaming of, imagining how great it could be, and we're going to do what it takes to make the structure and, the container that we need to grow what we hope for. When we have that full moon in Virgo, it really asks us to look at the details in the opposite part of the chart. So I tried to give examples of that for each rising sign, but the idea here is just that in order to achieve our Piscean hopes or dreams, we have to do the little tedious tasks all the time, and it actually helps to not focus, I think, on the larger picture sometimes, and to just focus on the Virgo, what we call tedium, but it really is the destination, or not the destination, it's the journey on the way to the destination. So if we're constantly just thinking about the destination, not thinking about the journey, that is a difficult way to live. It's very much the idea that, like, it's kind of trite, but I think it is very true that, you have to enjoy the journey. It's all about the journey. But that journey is, in this case, very much Virgo. It's very much just the boring stuff I have to do every day or every week or every month to get to where I want to go. Or if we're in relationship or something like that, it's all the little conversations we need to have, or the little texts of like extra good communication to make sure that we don't have little disagreements. It's all those little things you have to pay attention to regularly, that over time you see it grow into something that is what you had always hoped for or dreamed of, but you never got there by just like staring at it from a distance and just like trying to like manifest or whatever the fuck. So I do think that full moon, no offense, manifesting, I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it too. But the Virgo full moon really does ask us to look at the details, and it's going to be in the opposite house. So look at those topics for like which details are important here. What else? I think that's it. And I think I did decide, I feel like Mars and Gemini, this tension, it's just like scattered, distracting type of energy. It's like Mars is still pulling us in a bunch of different directions in Gemini, and it's really not helping us focus on the Piscean task at hand here. So when it comes to like the Mars and Gemini piece of this, right now, as we're trying to set something up, we're just on this like shaky, shifting ground, and we're trying to like build a container on it to grow something, or like we're accepting something and just like being crystallized and fortified in what we've accepted. if we can just like kind of know that Mars is distracting us in Gemini, and that frenzied, busy, restless energy is going to maybe not be as much of a note after March 25th, after Mars leaves Gemini. But right now, as we're trying to get things started in Pisces, it is creating a bit of a dissonant note. Okay. I think that's it. I think that's what I got. I really should not have done the Pisces materia before this. I was like, yeah, let's do it. We're gonna do the Pisces stuff. And I put on the Pisces incense, or not, no, the Fummel Hot ones from Sphere and Sundry. And I did some of the moon Pisces oil. And like, yeah, maybe should have gone with Mercury. Although I usually don't do the Mercury Cazimi stuff like afternoon because it's a little bit activating. But anyway, if I was a little spacey, that's probably why. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see. Do I have any announcements? I do. My books are always open. They're still open. If you have a full moon or a new moon in your birth chart, you should definitely hop on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. And I'm doing research that involves people who have a new or a full moon in their birth chart. It's called the Moon Under Bond. It's a technique that I've been working with folks, and I've been getting a lot of really cool results in my consultations. So what I'm going to try to do now is basically compile a bunch of real life examples of people who have the condition of Moon Under Bond in their chart so that I can create a lecture and try to teach other people how to use this and make it a more widely used technique, because I think it's really flipping cool. Has to be within 15 degrees. So if you have any questions, if you're like, I'm not sure, I don't know, just email me before you book so that we can check. I only accept people with charts, birth charts that have been verified from birth certificate or official record. It's my cheapest consult. It's $45 for 45 minutes. The technique usually only takes about 20 minutes. So then we'll have the other 25 minutes to go over whatever timing you want, whatever natal chart stuff. It's your time, so we can talk about whatever you want. Other than that, mostly just trying to get my newsletter out. I have a newsletter coming out in the next few days. Sign up for that on my website as well if you want to get my monthly newsletter. It's never more than that, very, very rarely, unless I have like a practice update or something like that. And then that does remind me, I did just send out a practice update on the 22nd of February. So in just 3 days, and I don't mean for this to like drum up scarcity because I hate that, but I am going to increase my prices on my forecasting consultations. So forecasting requires quite a bit more effort than just a regular birth chart reading. And so I'm going to charge more for it. I usually also include, or I have been including, and I plan to continue to include, a written forecast report at the end of every session. I will send that based on their rising sign to whoever I just consulted. So they'll have that. That's a value added thing. Mom is trying to get health insurance this year. We're trying to get health insurance. So if you can help me make money, maybe I can afford to have health insurance. So that's going to be increased by $25 on the 22nd. So if you want to get in on that, do it now. And then the prices are going to go up. I do have a sliding scale though, and that is not going to change. So if you are finding yourself in financial dire straits and you meet the criteria of the sliding scale, it's in my FAQ on my website. That's another option. And then books are open, doing research. Last thing, virtual astrology club for March. My March forecast is coming up also on the 22nd, and that's at 2 p.m. Central Time. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific Standard Time, on YouTube live right here. Same bat place, same bat channel, but 2 p.m. Central Time. And that's this Wednesday on the 22nd. I'll be going over the weather for March. Okay. I think that's everything. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope this new moon in Pisces is something that can be inspirational. We can feel empowered about. We can put in all of our elbow grease with Saturn coming in and find out all the little details that we need to go off on our various quests. But I hope it's a good new moon for you. Spend the next couple days chilling if you can. Okay. All right. I love you. Bye.